everyone, and welcome back to another Minecraft video. My name is Shells, and today we are back in the Legend of Alex world that I'm building. For those of you who do not know, this is my Legend of Zelda inspired adventure map that I'm building here in Minecraft. And today what we are going to be exploring is we're going to be taking a look at Hyrule Castle Town. Now, I know last time I was building in Hyrule Castle, I obviously did not finish that, as you can see from the giant floating structure in the sky over there. But before I can really work on that some more, I really ought to take a look at Castle Town, so that way I can then take a look at doing some of the terrain underneath the castle, and kind of get that more organized and arranged. I'm going to go ahead and give you a nice tour of what I have in some of my favorite builds. Obviously, not all of these buildings are going to stay, but there are quite a few of them that I am quite happy with, and so I will be keeping them as they are. And I'll go ahead and go through and show you exactly what I like and what I do not like. Now, when I was designing this town, I was trying really hard to make sure that there was a fine balance between buildings that served a purpose, such as like the shops and such, and buildings that were just for standard like housing, people who live there. But honestly what that means is I have quite a few of these houses that have nothing in them. So let's talk about some of the things that I'm happier with. I'll go ahead and cover some of the shops that I'm most proud of, because I will honestly say that the main buildings that I've constructed that I've actually been pleased with have been some of the shops. So this one in particular is going to be my dye shop. Similar to Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild, I wanted there to be an eccentrically colorful old man who lives in here, and also similarly, I wanted there to be a big tub that you have to, go up here and maybe select what color you want, and then be able to leap forth into the tub, and that will dye your clothes. Right outside my dye shop here, this is one that I'm not particularly pleased with the way it turned out, but I was trying really hard to base it off of the Happy Mask shop in Ocarina of Time. Now, I might change this. I think part of the problem is it's just too small compared to everything else, but I was trying to make a cute little Happy Mask shops in here. And quite honestly, the thing I was thinking you would do in here is I'm going to be scattering cookies throughout the world that you can collect. And I was going to have this guy trade cookies for quote-unquote masks, which would be basically different player heads that would have different effects on them. Things like water breathing or other things like that, or even give you a speed boost, just because I think that would be kind of neat. And that way your cookies are more like a currency where you can purchase specialty items with them. One of the buildings I'm most pleased with the interior is actually this bakery. I think just on the whole, I've got the look of a bakery pretty well down, and I really like the cakes in the display case, and I like the scale of this. So if I could make every other building match the scale of this bakery, that would be excellent. That's basically the goal that I'm going for. It's just a little bit sad that the bakery is not exactly... I want to have a way to feed the player, but most of the baked goods, like bread and stuff, just don't do enough. So, especially since I have this cafe over here, I sincerely doubt many people are actually going to go to the bakery unless I give them some specific things that you can get that are better in there. I don't know. It's hard to say. I did like this cafe as well, so that's where it's a toss-up. Do I keep the cafe, do I keep the bakery, or do I keep both of them just because I like them both? I'm not entirely sure. Well, on the opposite end of the spectrum, I have buildings like this one, where I am particularly fond of the way it looks on the outside, but I flat out didn't even know how to decorate the inside. I was kind of thinking having two tiers of shops, one down here, and one up above, And while there's always been like a bizarre type thing in Legend of Zelda games, I'm not sure entirely what they would sell other than things like arrows and bombs and stuff. So this would be my general store, but I honestly don't know exactly what to put in here. This is another building that I'm particularly happy with, and I do have a purpose for it as well. This is like a little schoolhouse, and I was planning on having like a teacher that's over there that's just like, oh, I'm looking for my students, they all ran off. And you have kind of a quest similar to the Majora's Mask, finding the bombers around the town. And then we have this building over here. This is supposed to be the inn. And the reason I liked this inn, you can tell I still had issues with scale for furniture and such, but the reason I liked having this place is that I wanted a spot where the player starts off. So I wanted them to start off in a room in the inn. And I specifically liked this spot because you had a clear view of the Temple of Time. And I'd kind of like to keep that where you start out in the game, the first thing you do is you look out the window and see the Temple of Time. However, since I'm planning on rearranging this whole town, I have to keep that in mind, that this inn has to be in a spot where this room in particular has a view of the Temple of Time. And this is where we have to discuss why I'm trying to rearrange stuff. I kind of want to make it so that way the East Gate has a direct route to the Temple of Time, and then have, I'd basically eliminate all of these buildings because the Temple of Time would be right there, which is just as well because most of those are useless, and then I'd move my actual gateway out of the town, probably closer to the castle itself. Either that, or I would have to make an eastern gate that ran alongside the Temple of Time, or I could put the Temple of Time slightly to the side there and have the east gate run behind the Temple of Time. I haven't quite decided what I want to do with that. Definitely for sure though, I'm going to be moving the southern gate. The southern gate is way the heck over here. And I want that to be on the cardinal directions of the actual compass here. So that way it's pretty easy if somebody says, oh, go out the south gate. Bam, there's the south gate, west gate, east gate, and of course north points directly into the castle, so there is no gate there. And I think that will just help prevent people from getting lost in the game. So, because of that, I think I'm just going to rearrange things, and I think while I'm rearranging things, I'm going to take that opportunity to remove some of the more redundant buildings, many of which I haven't even bothered furnishing, I will note. Just as an example, since I'm planning on removing these buildings, of these, the only one that's actually remotely interesting is probably this bathhouse. So I was kind of thinking of moving the bathhouse to be somewhere over here, since all three of these buildings are useless. They're redundant and not incorporated to anything. And it would make more sense for the bathhouse to be more of a centralized feature anyway. So that guy will probably move over there or there, and all of those buildings are going, and probably some of these ones will as well. I've pretty well covered all of the buildings I'm planning on keeping here. Other buildings I have here is I have a little stable. I may or may not keep that. I think that might be a good spot to, keep horses, and a good, reference to Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, the stable keeping there. So I don't think that's a bad thing. And then I have a blacksmith, which honestly needs to be redone. The only other structure that is important to note is I was planning on having a Bombchu bowling alley. However, this building is, shall we say, up for debate whether I'm going to keep it or not. And the reason being is I'm not sure if I can get it to work. You may or may not have seen this little mess of command blocks and a weird tunnel sitting outside of the actual castle. And the reason these things are sitting out here is because it initially started with my husband Delsavar was trying to mess with command blocks to actually get the Bomb Tube Bowling Alley to work. He didn't get it to work, and I've since gotten Aaron Space on helping me with other parts of the build, and he took a little throw at it for a little bit, but you can see the things have not ended well for this thing. We have not been able to get Bomb Tube Bowling Alley to work, unfortunately, so this building may or may not be here. That's kind of a shame, because I thought it would be fun to have at least some sort of mini game in the actual town, and I am very fond of Bomb Tube Bowling Alley, but something else this could turn into would be an archery range. So, either way. For those of you who are curious, this is what my little bathhouse looks like. Isn't it cute? I figure this will be a good spot for the player to quickly go and heal up hearts, similar to the hot springs that you find in many of the games. Just, you know, come here, heal up your hearts, and then leave. So that's another reason to have it as more of a centralized building instead of way off to the side. So there you have it. That is the town as it exists now. And as you may have noticed as a trend so far, I'm now going to take everything I toured for you and change it all. Now, unlike the other two things that I've done, I'm not just going to delete this and start over. As you may have noticed, I like most of the buildings that are here. I think the main thing to do is rearrange, condense, and improve. So I went ahead and changed my mind on this inn. I was going to take this building and splat it somewhere over there, probably replacing one of these buildings. But going inside, I can't help but notice that I'm not actually a big fan on how, like, this downstairs is fine, but like I'm not a big fan of how the upstairs looks at all. There's a lot of weirdness, and just so that way I could squish in as many rooms as I possibly could. It's not a very neat looking inn, and specifically this starting room where I wanted the player to start out. The window that I wanted you to be able to look out of is actually like blocked by the bed. You can't get to it, so it's not my favorite, and I've decided that I don't really like it that much. What I have instead decided upon is I had this little stable here, and I was kind of thinking that it was a useless build where I was just going to potentially get rid of it, but it was one of the few ones that I actually had fully furnished in here. And not only do you get a nice window, I actually added this window, there was no window before, but I added the window here. The Temple of Time is going to be moved over here, so we'll get a nice view of the Temple of Time there. And not only that, but looking at the positioning of this window, you also get a nice view of what will be the Hyrule Castle. Not sure how many people will notice that, since the window is up above and they're going to be turning and going down here. But it will be a nice effect to just be like, hey, Hyrule Castle. Now, of course, that could very well move. I might end up dropping that down a little, but I think elevation-wise, I think I do actually want the castle to be that high in comparison to the town. The nice thing about using this stable also means that I don't have to try to squish this building over here instead. Or what I was almost wondering if I should do is I was wondering if I should take this cafe, mirror it over to that side, and then take that in and squish it over here. It was going to be messy, and I'm kind of glad that I don't have to worry about it. Instead, I think I'm going to just completely remove this building here. And actually looking at a lot of these buildings, I think I'm going to be reducing the size of things significantly. I won't have this building here, but I will be having the gate right there. I might just not even put a building there. And of course I think I'm going to truncate the entire, basically this entire side over here is going to be gone. Just going to cut off Hyrule Castle Town right there. Though I will note that something that I'm worried about with cutting it off right there is that does mean that this school, well, I guess it will be a main thoroughway for... Oh wait, no wait, I'm not having the gate be over there because I'm moving it over there. Yeah, this poor school is going to be pointing into a wall. It makes me wonder if I actually need to rearrange where the school is. So... I don't know, do I take that and just, like, rotate it so that way then the doorway is facing out over here, or maybe even out onto the main street over here? This house is a useless one, so it can go, but I might have to rearrange the school a little bit. Ugh, I think I know why I didn't put the gate here. For some reason there's, like, this big hill, like, right there, right in my way. It seems very odd. I guess I could have, like, a staircase that leads down, but you don't see that in the game at all. It's always just a straight shot out. So I might have to do some terraining to actually flatten this out a little bit more and eliminate this hill, or at least make it slope a little bit nicer. And now for some terraining with shells! This has always been my methodology, is I lay out the lines where I want elevation changes, and then fill in from there. This is neither practical nor fast, so if you want to avoid this issue, don't be like me. Honestly, I need to learn how to use things like the Go Brush and a voxel sniper and those kinds of things, because this is a slow and painful process. Bam. And now, of course, we have a door that sticks way up in the sky, so that's a little bit problematic, but it'll be fine. I suppose the other solution I could maybe do is have it, instead of facing this way, rotate it so that way it's facing this main street. Alright, now that I've got the bathhouse moved over here, I can go ahead and remove all of these buildings and move the Temple of Time into this spot here. I am thinking of having the gate level with this, so that way all of the gates lead directly to the circle here. So that means my Temple of Time is actually going to be moved a little bit to the side, which I think is fine. It does mean that I'll just make a little path leading this way and then up to the Temple of Time. Oh boy, this is gonna be bad, I just know it. Here goes nothing. Beast! There it is! Alright, I think I'm pretty well done rearranging stuff for the moment. I think the next thing I want to do is actually start adding in some gradients and texturing into here. Because as it is, everything looks really, really flat, especially compared to the gradients I've got over there. And I think the biggest offender is the roof. And I did try to add in some little bits of the granite, but I am not a big fan of that, and so what I've done is I've actually gone and made a roof gradient. Maybe not my favorite gradient, I'll admit, but that way you actually get some sort of gradient added to it, and I have that copied. So now what I can go ahead and do, I think, is I could do a thing where I grab, say, all of this. First of all, I need to remove the granite bits so that way it is all one homogeneous color for the moment. Alright, so now that this is all brick slabs, I can comfortably say we're going to use the replace command again. We're going to replace the brick slab And we're going to say hashtag copy. Bam. Now it is a little bit concerning that now my roof sticks up a little bit above the edging that I have for it, because I've gone from using slabs to using full blocks. But I think I'm okay with that, and I can clean up some of the more atrocious looking edges later. But for now, I think I'm pretty well happy with this look. And what I can do is I can go to every single this way slanting roof and do that for all of them. Then what I do is I flip my copy over, and then I do all of those ones. And then I rotate my copy, do it for those ones, and then flip it again and do it for those ones. Something I'm noticing while I'm doing this is that it almost seems kind of arbitrary which part of the gradient it's selecting. You can see this one, it chose the really dark end, and then this one, it didn't get into the dark stuff like at all. It went to directly to the light end. And I'm not really sure what's dictating that. It does mean that my roofs are all going to be vastly different colors. I'm not sure if I like that or not. And then some of them are doing this thing where it's gone so far on the dark end that it suddenly decided to start over with the gradient. What's with that? Come now. I don't know how to prevent that. Like, this one would have been lovely if it had started with similar to that one, where it's the brightest color at the top and then moved to the dark. And I'm not really sure why it's doing that. It's almost like it's got a grid laid out for it already, and it's just following that same grid. And that's kind of annoying. I wish it wouldn't do that. So to fix that, I think what I'm going to have to do is lay the foundations for the colors on all of the roofs, but then go back and do some of them by hand. Like this one, I could definitely move the red down further and then go to the pink and then even include some of the brick. And I'll just have to do some of that by hand, I think, unfortunately. Hey, I flipped that gradient. It should be facing the other direction now. Come now, come now. Why are you doing this? Here, maybe if I rotate it by 180. And then do that. Nope, it just hates me. Alright, so new plan. We're going to have to do all of these roofs by hand. That really sucks. I was really hoping to avoid that issue and make this so much easier for myself, but no, it's not gonna let me. So we get to play the place 1,000 blocks by hand game. Yep, this'll take me a while. Make a gradient for the roofs, I said. It will be easy, I said. Well, this has taken me forever. I thought this would be simple because I thought that there were world edit tools that would help me. But while there are tools that sort of assist in adding textures, they're not smart tools. And so, honestly, I tried putting in stuff with world edit a couple different ways, and in the end, I placed most of these blocks by hand. And you'll notice that I don't just have gradients on the roofs, I also added gradients to the buildings, because it seemed really odd to have stark white buildings compared to these really, really, heavily gradiated roofs. And, well, while it took forever, it has certainly breathed new life into these buildings. I think I was getting really, really sick of how the buildings looked. They all looked flat and really boring. And while all of these buildings are basically, some of the same structures and stuff, they just look so much nicer with new gradients added onto them, in my opinion. I am wondering if I need to add a couple more buildings back here. I will have a wall coming this way and then coming this way, but I'm thinking it'll probably meet up with the Temple of Time level with this bell tower, which means that there's like this thin strip over here and a pocket right there that really needs some attention. I'm wondering if I can add another well. I have a couple of wells scattered about, and I did have one at the front entrance of the old front entrance there, but I can just shift it over here. Either way, man, this has been a lot of work, but it looks cool. But you notice something that bothers me now. I have all of these beautifully gradiated buildings, and then a flat ground. And I know I tried to scatter in some different kinds of the dead coral blocks to try to give it some texture, but that was, in the same effort that I did for trying to put granite mixed in with these bricks, in that it didn't actually do a whole lot for me. And I'm kind of wondering if I should try to add a gradient into the ground. I might try again at doing some of the brushes here. So here's the way that you make, when you are making a brush in World Edit, there's a way to do percentages. So you can say brush, sphere, or even actually for the ground I could do a cylinder. But then what you can do is say like 50% I want this to be the dead bubble coral. And then you put a comma, and then you would say I want it to be 25% acacia wood. And then 25%, where's my percent sign? There it is. Dead brain coral, because brain coral is slightly darker in coloring than everything else. Alright, and I should specify block, not just coral, or else I will be a sad, sad person. And then you can say, well, I want my size to be 3. So in that way, you can set a G mask first, and then basically you can paint the ground. And this works, but I found it so frustrating because it doesn't know how to gradiate properly. This is good for adding just a flat texture to things, but if you really want to put an actual gradient into something, you're going to have to do it by hand. But for the road, I think I can get away with it, because honestly, if I focus my attention around the edges of things, it might make somewhat of a gradient, and it'll probably be fine in that regard. So that's what I'm going to do here, just to add something to this road. I think part of my worry now is that some of my pattern is starting to get a little bit obscured here, and that's because I pushed the value of the actual road to be a little bit darker, which means it's now competing for the value that was my design. So I actually need to come in here with some of this black stone and add it into my design, and in general make these darker, because I would like you to still be able to distinctly see them. Some of the brighter values, not so much of a problem because I didn't add any highlights to the road, but definitely some of the darker bits need to be emphasized just a little bit more. Actually, just replacing the acacia wood with tuff seems to have improved the road quality dramatically. I think it's because the acacia wood was just too dark with not enough of a gap bridger between the two colors. Alright, so the next thing we need to do here is we need to start designing our wall. There's a reason I removed the wall in the first place here, is because I was not happy with it. It was kind of nice that it had the Roman arches going along, and I may yet include that, but I'm kind of thinking not. Some of the problem was it was too short. I think it came level with those windows there, so you could see the windows peeking over the top, which honestly is not going to keep out any invaders. And if you look at the actual pictures of the outside wall as seen from Ocarina of Time, you can see that they're quite excessively tall, which is how they ought to be if they're going to actually be protecting anyone. So the main thing we have to do is establish the height of our walls. So I'm going to back away a little bit from this because I think that there will be, the actual gate needs to go here. But somewhere around here-ish is going to be the wall. I suspect we'll have a walkway at least 3 blocks wide and then the other side of the wall. So that's what we're going to do there. And let's go ahead and establish a height to this sucker. Too bright, too busy. I think I need to reduce the amount of blocks I'm gradiating through here. Well, it's more of the color I want, but the problem is the moment you get up to it, this texture is just ugh. Better or worse? I'm going to go with probably worse. I kind of like it, but I also worry it's a little bit too busy. It's funny though. Just, droppers. Yeah, droppers and pistons. Who'da thunk? I don't know that I'm in love with it. I think I like it more, except that this is going to be viewed from a distance, and that's going to... small textures tend to play with your eyes a little bit funny when you're far away from them. And this is supposed to be, you know, a backdrop. It's a wall. Nobody wants to look at a wall, and so having a very textured wall seems a little bit off. So I might just get rid of all of the droppers. Sad day. Alright, let's be honest. This is more the gradient color palette I would want. It's got more of the beige stuff. Again, yeah, I'm particularly fond of beige, but you can see that once we reach this point, there just isn't a good gap bridger between the acacia wood and the mud. The deep slate isn't quite the right color that I would want, but I can't really find anything else. I'm gonna try it on the wall and see if I like it any better than this mess. Yep, I ousted the deep slate. Still not happy with the mud. It's too much of a contrast. But I know it illuminates all semblance of looking like a brick wall. Because I've removed every single type of brick in this, except for the brick quartz, but that's going to go up in the castle and not in the walls. But it's the color I want it to be, so there. Except you, mud. Looking at you. There we go. That's better. Now the challenge is almost none of these have a stair or slab variant, which is going to make it very, very hard to actually make any proper battlements onto this thing. Oh no, what have I done to myself? There's that. I probably should have just stuck with something related to the bricks, but I just didn't like them, so there. Well, this is the dumbest idea I've had in a while. No. No, I don't think so. I don't know. Would it look better if I added things like buttresses and the battlements to this? Maybe. I'm gonna run with it just to see if I like it. Just for a little bit, but I don't expect to keep this. Alright, so let's talk about castle wall architecture and things I want to include in my castle wall here. Things I want to include is the machicolations. I actually had to look up that word because I didn't know it before. I knew of what it was, but I didn't know the actual word. Machicolation. So there's little gaps in the floor of the walkway up above, so that way they can drop down burning rocks or boiling oil on anybody trying to climb the walls immediately below them. So I want to be able to make said gap, and then we have what are called corbels, which are just basically brackets that are holding up the actual wall for the parapet that will sit on the outside of this thing. So with the parapets will actually have the crenellation, which is the actual you know, typical castle wall looking thing. So that's where I am going a little bit higher with my scale, just that way I can get a lot of details. So I'm thinking, you know, corbel, I kind of want to have almost a Roman arch looking thing for the matriculation, but this is where the hole will be. I almost wonder if I have this corbel sticking out too much. But I'm noticing very quickly that my details are getting lost just because it's all the same color here. I almost wonder if I need to make the corbels something like the deep slate brick stairs instead, just to make them stand out a little bit more. Because as it is, it does stand out a little bit, but it's not enough. Here, I can even show you if I put another one here. Yeah, it's there, but it's kind of hiding, and I don't really want it to hide. So, let's maybe try to make that stand out a little bit more. What do you think? Is it maybe a little bit too much? It might be a little bit too much. The crenellations, they look accurate according to what's on the actual castle, but not for what's supposed to be on the walls. But they look cool, darn it. I did add a little bit, or attempted to add the wings for the bird, for the royal crest here. I think it was a nice touch, adding it to the crenellations there. I am noting that I was planning on having of actual floor to walk on that was a different color than the rest of the wall, but because of the way I have the wall here, even if I replace this block here to make it a different color, you can still see that in that spot there, which I suppose I could cover up if I really cared that much about it, but yeah, I don't know. Having just gray might be sufficient. I definitely wouldn't be able to put it on this block here, so it seems kind of odd to have it just randomly be like brick, and then probably the block I would use would be, where is it? Dark prismarine. Just because that's kind of the block that it looks like the walls are in A Link to the Past. But it would be odd to have it be, yeah, the brick, a single layer of deep slate of the dark prismarine, and then more brick on the other side. So I'm not sure it's worth it. With how bulky this wall is, I don't even need to bulk it out by having a separate wall. I think I can just copy this and flip it and paste it and have just this one single wall here. And that still gives me a pretty decently wide walkway up here. So it's kind of neat. Something I'm a little bit worried about is my chimneys are blending into this thing like crazy. Look at that. So I'm wondering if I should replace the chimneys at least a little bit with deep slate, because I don't think they can stay the way they are. And that's just as well, honestly. I think I was a little bit iffy about the way the brick blended in with the walls anyway, so I think I'm just gonna change all of those to be deep slate instead. I don't know, the more I work on this, the less I'm sure that I like it. It's okay, I guess, but it is very textured and busy, and I worry that my gradient is almost entirely lost. It looks very, very flat, which, you know, for a wall, it's not the worst, but I don't love it. So the final nail in the coffin has been struck. I asked my husband what he thought of my wall, and he said, "That doesn't look like brickwork, it looks more like chainmail." Which was pretty well the comment I was trying to avoid. And, you know, he is right. I was worried about it. I think I might try this method again in the future, but not for my main town here. So I'm just going to get rid of it and probably slap in just a plain gradient. Ta-da! It's significantly more boring, but that's probably for the best because it's just a wall. It's meant to be boring. I did remove the tops. I felt like they were a little bit too busy and extreme. So, you get just regular old battlements, you know. Alright, now that we've spent far too long trying to design this wall, let's go ahead and design our guard tower. I don't think I want to spend too much time on this thing, especially since I spent so long on the wall, so hopefully we can get this done quickly. I'm going to be using the guard towers from, like, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Mostly Tears of the Kingdom, since I've actually played that one more than Breath of the Wild. And my reasoning is that it's the only guard towers you can actually, like, walk in and wander around and see what it looks like, in the games. So that's what we're going to use as a reference. Okay, just a little bit of a change of plans. For one thing, I decided I would rather have an octagon shape. I know they're all square-shaped at the base in Tears of the Kingdom, but I much prefer octagons. They look a lot smoother, and it will be easier for you to enter this thing with a doorway right here if I have actually this slanted instead of being a corner that I'm trying to work with. So looking at this, I can already tell from the size of this tower that I don't have enough room for a full tower over here. So I have two options I can do. One is I can bump this whole wall further that way, and then extend the wall over. Or what I can do is I can hack off one of these sections of the wall, move it to where it needs to be, and in that case, the wall will actually be probably closer to this road, which might actually not be a bad idea since I don't actually know what I'm going to put here. So might be best to just try to line that wall up with the edge of the road instead of where it is currently. I'm still not entirely certain how we're going to make this thing mesh with the Temple of Time. I'm almost certainly going to have to move the Temple of Time over a little bit though, because it is too close to that to actually build a proper gate there. So with another section of wall put right here, so that's accounting for a buttress and a section of wall, we actually have this little tiny spot here that I could make a tiny tower and then have a matching tiny tower on that side. So maybe not all hope is lost. So I really hate to do this to you guys, but ta-da! It's done! I did have some of it recorded, but due to technical difficulties, I seem to have lost the audio for a great deal of what I recorded, and it's probably just as well because I also got sick during this time. So I ended up building a lot off camera anyway, just because I've been sick. You may or may not hear it in my voice a little bit now, but it was definitely there during my recordings, so it's probably for the best. I'm just going to go ahead and give you a little bit of a tour as to what I've done and talk about it. So the first thing to talk about is this cute little guard tower that I've got over here. I mentioned before that I was really struggling trying to fit it in between the Temple of Time anyway, and I did end up having to move the Temple of Time over just a tad, and honestly that's fine. I also raised it up a little bit so you go up a little hill to get to the Temple of Time. As for the tower itself, I was really inspired by a lot of the Tears of the Kingdom builds for all of my guard towers. And then I decided to take this design that I made, and I just copied it and pasted it over onto the other side. Gave it a little bit of a recolor so that way it's clearly, you know, this is the Lanayru Gate, that's the Elden Gate. But they were directly across from each other, and it just made more sense with intervals. I was having trouble spacing the wall because I wanted to keep this interval between the buttresses. So things didn't quite line up as I would have liked, but it all worked out in the end. So all of these towers are exactly the same. I struggled with trying to make these towers. Some of the issue was I was trying to be true to the Tears of the Kingdom. I was trying to make it so that way you go down steps to get to a second layer, and then the giant drop ladder that leads down into the main base of the tower. And the problem with that was that you have this little lip that is level with the edge of the wall here, and then this section here is slightly smaller than that section. So it made more sense to have the second floor level with the top of this lip instead of down below it. As it was, I was trying to basically force windows right in the middle of this, and it wasn't working very well. But in the end, I ended up with this design. I think something that really improved the look was trying to add some of these buttresses. I know for a while I was struggling just trying to make an octagon with nothing on it, and buttresses make everything better, so yay, buttresses! Something I will point out about these towers is I did put a little bit of white carpet on the tops of the crenellations, and it may look a little bit ugly from above, but the reason I have that is because I was having the problem where the crenellations were the same color as the tower behind, and you couldn't really see where the crenellations ended and the tower began. They were blending in too much. So the white carpet doesn't do too much to them, but it does just create that little bit of a line that distinguishes them. And I figured most people aren't going to be viewing this from the air anyway, so it's probably fine. Something that was nice about using the larger towers for this particular entrance here is it actually meant that I could put in a proper double portcullis. This is something you'll see in a lot of castles where there's two portcullises, and then in the middle is a slot for a kill chamber. So that way you have a bunch of guards that are, defending the town. Even if somebody gets into the first layer of the portcullis, you can still shoot them with arrows as they try to figure out how to get in through the second section of the portcullis. So that was a neat little addition. So that was fun. I did have problems where I was kind of running into this building. I've honestly debated just removing this building about a dozen different times just because it's blocking the flag, it's really, really close up, and it is kind of an ugly, useless building. But it is one that I actually bothered to furnish on the inside, and so part of me, it feels kind of wrong to just completely demolish it and remove it, so yeah, whatever. I think the last thing to really mention what I did, I found that the grass, just leaving it all as empty grass, was horribly boring. Especially after I put gradients in pretty much everything else in this town. Having just flat grass was just awful. So I decided to add in this gradient. So what I did is I noticed when I was doing all of the houses that when you do the copy, and then you do a replace command with the hashtag clipboard or copy, it tended to tile what you made. So in a creative world, I actually made a big giant tileable surface that basically gradiated all the way from my dirt path all the way to my brightest colors, which was the green concrete powder, as well as grass, just the plain grass block. And the idea behind this is that I could pretty easily take this and copy and paste it into Hyrule Field. There are some spots that obviously look muddy, but I was a little bit lucky in that it ended up being right over the top of the actual stable, which makes sense. And also we had one back over here, but that's also going to be a main thoroughfare way of getting between the guard towers, so that one made sense too. So, honestly, I'm very happy with the way this gradient turned out. Just another thing that adds just a little bit more to the town. Something that was a little bit sad about this gradient is that it means that there's an awful lot of blocks that I actually can't put grass on unless I glitch them in, grass or flowers. But I do have things like the moss block, any of the grass blocks, and then strangely enough, the muddy mangrove roots you can actually plant stuff on as well. So at least there's 3 things that I can reasonably put grass on. So I'm not too worried about it. Yeah, there's a couple of plain spots, but it's fine. It did mean I did end up glitching some of these flowers in just because I didn't want to wreck the gradient, but I did want these flowers to be in the central area here, so that's okay. Otherwise, I think that's going to do it for today's episode here. I'm really happy with the way the town has turned out. It looks so much nicer than it did before. And I hope that you can look at and appreciate just the difference that it's made from where we started from and where we are now here. But I still have some things to do, mostly with furnishing and trying to fill out some of the shops and stuff. But for the most part, I'm done. The town is completely finished, and I am thrilled to bits with it. So, I hope that you've enjoyed today's episode. Sorry there were some technical difficulties, but I do think it's worth it, and I hope that you do too. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye!